Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our virtual panel discussion, Global Capability Centers, the Tech-tonic Shift, where we will discuss the role of emerging technologies in the reinvention of global capability centers. I am Rodra Bhattacharya, and today I'm joined by some esteemed thought leaders who will be sharing their insights with us on this topic. Our panelists include Sudeep Srivastav, Head Digital Productivity Studio at Schlumberger. Mr. Vikas Banga, he will shortly join us. He's not on the panel right now. Vice President Products at Fairportal. Partha Mukhopadhyay, Associate Director Intelligent Automation at Cargill. And Shantanu Kar, Global Program Manager, Head Cognitive Robotics, IQVIA. And finally, Mr. Milan Sheth, Executive Vice President, IMEA at Automation Anywhere. GCCs have come a long way from simply being internal operation centers for their respective companies. With increasing digital penetration, they have taken on a global outlook, delivering future-forward business solutions for their parent organizations. So, how have emerging technologies aided in this tectonic shift? It's time to turn to our panelists for some insightful answers. But firstly, I would like all our speakers to talk a bit about their organizations, the specific challenges that they've faced post-COVID, and how they're dealing with the same. Maybe Mr. Srivastav, you could start.
Sure. Thank you, Rodra. So, welcome all. I'm Sudeep Srivastav. I head the Digital Productivity Studio in Schlumberger. And what it encompasses is digital end-to-end completely, which includes heading the robotics and intelligent automation, includes all the web and mobile applications. So basically, it's providing all digital end-to-end solution for Schlumberger. Schlumberger, if you have not heard of the company before, is an oil and gas services major, oil and gas services leader, and has operations in more than 85 countries with 100,000 people. With the COVID situation, I am sure you guys are aware how the situation has evolved now. And it is extremely difficult in the current market. The prices have gone down, significant cost reduction across the board, the profit margin shrinking. And automation in such a situation plays a very, very crucial role to help us operate with the margin that we already want to sustain. So I think it's a key element here, and it has disrupted actually the organization and the industry we cater to.
Thank you, Mr. Srivastav. Mr. Mukhopadhyay, maybe you could talk a bit about your company and the challenges that you faced in this, unprecedented times. Sir, you are on mute. I will just unmute you.
Sure.
Yes.
I'm Partha. I'm part of the Intelligent Automation team at Cargill Digital Labs, and I lead the EMEA and Asia Pacific regions for Intelligent Automation. Cargill is primarily food, agricultural, financial, and industrial services and products company. In short, we deal with food grains, oil, seeds, and we work both for food for humans as well as food for animals. It's a very old company. It's a 150-year-old company, very large organization, 100 billion plus in revenue. We are 150,000 people across the globe in 70 different countries. So a really, really a large, and diverse organization. At Cargill, especially for the folks joining from India, I think some of the brands that you may be familiar with are Swikar, Nature Fresh, Atta, and some of the popular oil brands like Gemini Oil and so on. Right, these are some of the brands. Now, coming to the question of the COVID, right? Like everybody else, it is a situation which is, it's really life changing, right, and transforming, right. The ways of working that we were very familiar with, right, sitting face down, face to face with people, getting things done is completely disrupted, right? So from supply chain, because we are a large supply chain organization, supply chain to how our operations work, how the GCC teams support our customers across the globe, it's gone through changes, right? And we are working through, and automation is helping some of that.
Thanks a lot, sir. Mr. Sheth, maybe you could add a few words about how your
Yes,
organization.
so Radha,
Thank
so
you.
good, pleasure to be here with the panelists. So we are essentially, unlike some of the other companies, we are seeing a huge uptick in our solutions we offer. As two other panelists mentioned, automation is playing a crucial role, both in continuity and resilience of the operations for a lot of our global customers. And second, also allowing them to scale up very faster when people are not able to work together. So for us, this has been a very good time to partner with our customers and helping them deliver seamless and uninterrupted services to their customers wherever they are. So that's been so far the COVID story. We'll talk more about how automation is acting, particularly from India, because one of the themes we have spoken about for the last several years, being a global leader in this space, is India is truly the automation capital of the world, and companies like which are on panel today or otherwise have been played an instrumental role in making sure that their global parents' operations have continued without any disruption. So we'll talk more about it as we progress.
Thank you, Mr. Sheth. Mr. Kar, a bit about how your organization is dealing with the current situation. We have a fifth panelist, however, he's yet to join us. So, Mr. Kar, please do let us know.
Sure, Rudra. So IQVIA actually is around 65 years old. It was founded in 1952, and we are having our footprints over 100 plus countries, and we are the leading organization in healthcare data science and clinical trials. So when I say clinical trials, you must be knowing before a drug is released into the market, it has to go through multiple layers of clinical trial. And our organization will play a very vital role in this COVID-19 situation. When it comes to the operation effectiveness and the implementation of AI technology, so being a human data science company and a tech company, we have lots of innovations in this particular area, and we are the leading organization in this particular area. So being a market leader, we have offerings for every particular genre of health sciences where actually we can implement AI and ML technology. So when it comes to the impact of global pandemic, our organization was not impacted anyway because we are very much prepared and we are pushing this digital automation for a long time. So we are very much prepared to handle any such situation.
Thank you, sir. So this is great to set context to our discussion today. A very important discussion, a generational shift happening in the GCC space, given the technologies available today. Before we move on to our panel discussion, one quick point for all our audience: do share your questions across. So if you're watching us on Twitter, or on YouTube, or on Facebook, do share your questions on the comment section, and we would take a few towards the end of the discussion today. So my first question for Mr. Srivastav. What are the three most important things that robotics and intelligent automation can improve in the organizational structures of GCCs?
Okay, thank you, Ratra. So honestly, more than technology, what has changed is the need that we have today. Okay, this whole COVID thing has drastically changed the business model itself. So one of the things that I would highlight is where automation, robotics and intelligent automation can contribute significantly in establishing the right business model in the current economic environment. People were looking for automation. We were very aggressive on automation, and in partnership with Automation Anywhere, we had achieved a great scale for automation. But the kind of request we are getting today is massive for automation. And the way we are looking, because doing it everything remote, bringing down the cost structure significantly. So the second thing that will reduce is the structural cost that will have to that will it impact. Okay. So what we are looking to do is how we can work in the remote environment completely and how we operate from where we are. And this calls for huge dramatic changes. This leverages the automation to its probably limits where we can leverage what it is doing. The third element that we have to must have is reliability, which automation can contribute significantly. Because one of the key aspect is reliability and safety that we are looking to bring in the picture. So I'll say three things that it impacts directly to the GCC is business model change, because now people are looking for alternative how we can approach the same thing, creating and keeping the same margin of profit and still deliver the services today what we have or much beyond than what we have today. The third is the structural cost, which will change dramatically the way the organizations are structured. And the last part is reliability and safety, which the automation will be going to be a key piece there. So these are the three impacts that will dramatically impact.
Thanks, sir. So that brings me to my next question, which is for Partha. So GCCs have come a long way from simply being internal operation centers for their respective companies. How is RPA enabling this global shift?
Yeah. See, when GCC started, I think the focus was cost arbitrage and work consolidation, right? How can we deliver better, faster, right? But I think over last several years, they have really become centers of excellence, providing amazing expertise on functional areas. I mean, be it finance, HR, supply chain. I mean, it is amazing, skill set, depth, and experience provided that's being shared through the GCCs. I think RPA is driving a couple of key points on what RPA is really driving in the GCCs. I call it in what I named jokingly as DESI, right? DESI. So first is D is delivering outcomes and business results, right? RPA really is a business tool, right? It has RPA implementations and automation has to be led by the business, right? So they're very aligned right from the word go on what is the business value this is going to create, right? What's the impact it's going to have on the business? And it calls for a very close collaboration between business and technology teams to work together. So I consider that as the D, first one of the DESI. The second one, E, is really the enhancing experience or enhancing or augmenting the capabilities of the employees, right? It also leads to a better experience for the customers and suppliers and partners, but also employees. Let me give an example, right? Typically, GCCs handle, loads, right? Peak volumes, right? Traditionally, you would have to have folks who would come in, take that work and, do that. I mean, you would basically have to staff to KT. A lot of operational activities need to do when you really anticipate a spike. But with bots, you are able to plug in and plug out that capacity, right? You need an extra capacity. It's a matter of just putting one more bot to do the work, right? So it's a huge augmentation of the teams, right? That's it. This next one, F, is for what I'm calling as simplification, right? The GCCs are also a lot of aggregated processes across the globe, right? And a very varied technology landscape, right? I think what RPA has phenomenally done is that it has started discussions on simplification of process. RPA can work across legacy landscape. It can work on, really the latest generations of technologies. It can work with all. So phenomenal discussions on process simplification, standardization, and making continuous improvement. That's the one. The last one is I for insights, right? Process metrics, capture process metrics with automation and help or use the data to continually drive improvements in your process. That's I think really the value being driven by RPA. Yeah. Go back to you.
Thank you, Partha. That brings me to a question. I mean, you spoke about some very interesting points, and I've been sort of making notes at the same time. So this question is for Shantanu. So India has seen a lot of innovation in the AI space. Clearly, we have a lot of startups, a very young and hungry tech industry, so to say. What role do you think the Indian IT industry can play in making capability centers truly global?
Right. So there are a couple of things, Partha. I just want to highlight some of the data. So one is the AI readiness. So if you look into the global government AI readiness index, India is currently number 17 with a score of 7.515. And India is actually much ahead from our neighbors and also into the elite group. And as my friend Milan just have mentioned, India will be playing a very important role in this particular area. So when actually it comes to AI, automation, and robotics, I would just like to highlight most of the tools which are currently being used in the industry are mostly supported from India. India is number one in back office automation in the world, and our government is also patronizing this and promoting this particular area. So I can see there is a very bright future of India. But at the same time, there are certain fallbacks. If you look into the number of people who have been completed their PhDs in artificial intelligence, so you will find globally there are around 22,000 people who have completed their PhD into artificial intelligence, but only 386 from India, which is merely 1.75%, so less than 2% people. But we have very huge potential, so it requires good intention, and I think with good intention we can achieve anything. So I always say, if there is a will, there is a way. So government requires to patronize and promote this technology. Only then the organizations will be able to take the fruit of this particular technology.
Shantanu, you said a very interesting thing there, that we are in the 17th position globally among our peers or allied countries, right? In the space of AI readiness. Now, this is a question that I'm sort of throwing open to all panelists. Please just sort of let me know. Clearly, one thing that has emerged out of the lockdown, the pandemic, is that the digital, so to say, industry, the technology industry, is definitely going to be one of the key drivers going ahead. One of the biggest companies in the world, I think, out of the top 10 companies of the world, the largest company, most of the companies are anyway technology companies today in terms of their size, their market capitalization. Right now, in such a space, being 17th, is that something to celebrate? Considering that India is being seen as a country that is expected to fill some sort of a global vacuum in a lot of across a lot of industries. What is your view on that? Is 17 something to celebrate, or should we be actually celebrating when we are one of the top 5?
Yeah, so I just want to start with I have just mentioned if there is a will, there is a way. So India government actually started patronizing all the AI initiatives. They have launched a policy in 2018, which is the National Strategy for Artificial Intelligence, and then they have also launched a National AI Portal into 2020. And Automation Anywhere, you may be knowing this company. Milan is here from Automation Anywhere. They're the largest RPA company in the world. So I can see a very bright future of India. And recently, Automation Anywhere has signed a MOU with Government of India to automate the government offices, which is incredible. So I can see a very bright future of India. Government is with the right intention. They are supporting the Indian tech startups, and with NESCOM, they have also started new initiatives. So I believe we will be going up in this ladder in coming days.
Yeah. Mr. Shade, anything to add to that point, sir?
Yeah, so Rudra, I think there are a couple of dimensions here, right? So when let's just understand the ranking itself and it's in the right spirit. If I look at the usage of AI, I think a lot of innovation gets done in the Silicon Valley, and the Silicon Valley tech companies are probably far ahead of using this technology on a day-to-day basis. What we as consumers experience it has been built, and I think clearly US, Israel are the countries which have a huge lead pretty much over. And there is what I would call it as a technology, the core technology itself. Then there is an aspect which is what I would call it as a commercial application of AI. Right. So technology companies using technology is just touching a very small segment of the society. Then there is a commercial application. The companies which are represented here, and many such companies, how do they improve and how do they deliver better results with technology than what they did in past? And I think that's one area I would say that India is definitely in the elite group, because many of the global companies run their operations out of India. They use technology like ours and many others. We are obviously a leading player, but there are many other adjacent technologies which are being used in this space. The third dimension, which Shantanu rightly highlighted, is the government. You see, the government policy and the acknowledgement and usage. I think usage we are behind clearly, because right now with just the familiarization, acceptance of the technology, I think that's crucial, and that's what I think you rightly mentioned that we've tied up in that dimension. And the fourth and the final dimension is skill. That do you have a supply chain or professionals coming up in India? And I think there is a huge ecosystem today. Whether you mentioned about startups earlier, but whether it's startup or the leading Indian IT companies, if you see the amount of digital revenue Indian IT companies are reporting, I think they're clearly building skills and capabilities in that area. So, in summary, yes, we have a fair bit to catch up, but there are some good foundational and building blocks for us to progress in that direction.
Thanks. Would any of our panelists want to add to that point? Mr. Srivastava?
Yeah, I just want to highlight one more thing
Yes,
that Milan has just mentioned, that in terms of back office automation, India is still number one. Most of the organization across the world, they are running their back office from India, and nobody can beat us in that particular area. This is something very interesting, and we will be very closely observing that how government of India will take this forward. So far, everything is going perfect. We want to see more progress, and we are hopeful.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, essentially, we would also want to climb up the value chain. I think that's also important. I mean, I'm sure we'll get there. Like you mentioned, the policy is in its right place. It should encourage more and more people in this direction. Mr. Sheth, I will stay with you with my next question. So you've helped a few of companies drive growth through intelligent automation. What are these key trends that GCCs should look out for in this domain?
So I think there are three aspects in when GCC are looking at. I think Partha touched on it through his very interesting acronym. Is that you do technology not for sake of technology. You do it to deliver the outcome. And I think one of the the change which has happened is that the global centers here are truly become capability centers. So when they are building capabilities, one of the capabilities they build is robotics, AI, which makes a direct impact on the outcome, productivity outcome, efficiency outcome of the company. So that's the first dimension. The second is the capturing knowledge. I think one of the most unique thing in India, as Shantanu referred, and even Sudeep made it a comment earlier, that there is a data residency here because the global companies reside particularly in GCC. There is a lot of process expertise and process knowledge which is residing here, and then you have this third layer of technology coming in. So, if you are in any other parent organization, that just doesn't stay together. I think in India, most of the GCCs, I would say 90% of GCCs operate all three in a seamless fashion. And the last part, I would say that probably plays a big role is the sheer leadership talent. See, any new technology adoption relies heavily on leaders who are willing to take risks. And I would say somehow we are fortunate that in GCC community we have leaders. Some of them are on the panel today, but across the community there is tremendous leadership which is willing to challenge the status quo, take this technology and take it to that that level of implementation. So I would say that probably all three, unique situation, which is where you see the resultant outcomes in organizations across sectors.
Thanks, Mr. Sheth. My next question. So I'm coming back to Mr. Srivastav. So the IT and operations departments in organizations have traditionally been separate units. But in today's digital era, why do you think that their collaboration is important, is key? And what role can emerging technologies play in this matter?
Okay, thank you, Radra. So, see, end of day, whatever we do, there has to be a value generation in what we do, right? Like I was mentioning earlier in my previous statement also, that it is not as much about technology today, is as much about the need that we have. Okay, so the focus goes back to the need we have. Our need is strongly around how do we operate similarly or much better and much better than our competitors, right? And how do we make it more reliable or more accurate? Okay, so considering those needs, the innovation is happening based on need, the acceptance is happening based on need. Like, you know, Milan was talking about the acceptance from the businesses side. So now that we have been able to showcase the value generation that we can do through automation, the acceptance is very high in the businesses also, right? The operations team is constantly pushed to bring down their cost of operations, to innovate, and to deliver much better solutions to the respective clients. So eventually, they turn towards the GCC and the IT as a whole, saying, "How do we do that?" Because they honestly they are not the technology experts. So then they come back to us and asking, saying, "How do we do that?" And that's where this whole thing marries together. That's where this will create a wonderful impact. Now, I'll give you an example what we are trying to do. Okay, so we have something called rig in the future today. Okay, so rig in the future is a concept around how we deliver the same kind of services from being remote. That's the rig in the future, because if you understand, oil and gas is operate. What we do is we take out the oil from either land or offshore, which is the ocean. And we need heavy machinery. We need so many people to operate. But can we imagine a world where everything is happening automatically from remote? And this is where calls for automation at several levels, because it is impossible without automation. So I think merger of IT and operation is very, very nearby. It's probably happening across the board. We are seeing it, and this is going to impact and create a lot of value for across the industry in a big way.
That's a very interesting point that you made. I mean, honestly, my next question to that would be: so you're talking about IT and operations. Definitely, there is a case for merger of IT with several other functions as well, right? Is there not? I mean, for example, IT is driving many other functions to become much more accountable. Technology is driving. I mean, one case is marketing, for example. The world of marketing has completely changed ever since technology has made marketers far more accountable. It's far harder for marketers. So, just your viewpoints on that. I think that's a very interesting point that you made. I mean, the need case, accountability, and the rig in the future. I would love to find out more what the rig in the future is about. Any comments on that thought? What other functions you think are also sort of combining with IT?
Yeah, so Rudra, if you look closely, the way actually we are integrating different sectors together with AI and RPA and automation, it is not very far that from our agriculture to education to politics, marketing, and our nuclear launch, everything will be done automatically through automation. And I would just like to highlight on a very interesting fact. Application of AI into agriculture industry. If you just look into the applications, you will find that different states and different regions, there are different rate of rain, right? So the deep learning model can be built to understand and study the crops which can be grown in those areas, right? And accordingly, we can create a market for the local farmers. So in future, we'll be very heavily dependent on AI technology to build analytics and perform such works. So I think there are a number of things which we can correlate with this particular technology.
Thanks, Shantanu. So I would like to bring Partha back into our discussion. Sir, my next question is to you. How are GCCs transforming their workforce, innovating their ecosystem, and fostering growth using AI and machine learning as a key enabler?
Interesting question, Rudro. So I'll split it into two parts, right? First comes the workforce, right? I think the workforce of the future will be a combination of humans and bots. I mentioned about bots, right? Whether they're RPA or AI ML enhanced bots, but they will work together, right? And we are seeing, if you look at the GCC operations teams, many of the teams now have bots and humans collaborating. In fact, we even name the bots, right? We even named the bot. So it's like, Polly, the bot, has joined the team, right? So it's going to be a very close, collaboration. The roles of the team leads and supervisors are going to be different. They are not only going to manage humans, but they will have to have the skill sets to manage bots as well, right? So that's what we will see, and we are seeing, that cycle kind of start. That's one. Second question was on the innovation track, right? I think the innovation will happen in 3 tracks, right? So, and these tracks are actually decided by the nature of work, right? So the nature of work, not only that is being done across GCC, but overall nature of work, right? Fundamental, how the work is, right? So that's divided into 3 buckets, right? So the first one is really what you would call, typical, very well-defined, right? Rule-based kind of work, right? Which is where RPA really plays to its strength, right? And that's where RPA is, bringing huge value in terms of handling, doing stuff very accurately, quickly, huge volumes, providing great scalability and all that, right? So that's one. The second track is happening where there is interpretation and judgment, right? Where is interpretation and judgment, needed. Case in point, right? For example, typically GCCs do a lot of, document processing, invoice, contracts, and stuff like that, right? And there, it's not really, you are not dealing with very structured information. You're dealing with a set of, very unstructured type of documents. You don't know exactly what a certain, action you would need to take, right? With, based on maybe the data or based on how you extract. So in that track, you're seeing increasingly AI being used to AI models come in to better understand what is it that we are talking about. For example, I'll give a real example. A lot of times, GCC teams handle emails, right? Requests from customers, right? Traditionally, you would have a person looking at that email, then take an action on your systems, right? IT systems and stuff. We are building AI models which will make sense of that email and find out what needs to be done and then hand it over to a RPA bot. The RPA bot will take that over and actually go and make that change. So it's combination of these 2 technologies which is making it really powerful, right? So that's the second track. The third one, and I'll take maybe half a minute more. The third track is more on the interaction, right? The kind of work that needs interaction. These are sales, marketing, and stuff like that, where you have to talk to your customer, you have to talk to your partner, so the partner is trying to reach out to you. Those kind of activities you are seeing more automated using, say, for example, things like chatbots, digital assistants, voice bots, right? Banks have really been leading the way when it comes to voice biometrics, authentication, and providing services, right? So that's really the third track, which is automation on the interaction work or the interactive work. Those are the 3 really tracks of innovation that's going on.
A really interesting chain of thought, and I mean, I love the fact that you've really thought it through in terms of all the very, very clear, distinct points. The first point, as usual, stuck a chord in me: a dystopian world where one of the bots is a is a colleague of ours. How do we sort of work with that? But it's interesting. I'm sure all of us are heading towards that, and I really doubt there's anything to be worried about. It's something that all of us need to be prepared and be ready to work with, right? So this is really interesting. My next question to Mr. Shantanu Kar, in your opinion, sir, with the global pandemic, how can GCCs leverage AI to add value to their parent organization?
Yeah, so this question is very interesting, and I again want to share some data.
We have touched upon this before,
So,
right? Yeah.
right. So, after this pandemic, what is happening now? Most of the organizations are looking forward to have digital workforce, and this push is about 70 to 80% of the whole industry. 57% of the organizations are rescaling or cross-scaling their existing resources into RPA and AI technology, and 70% of the organizations thinking of implementing AI. So this is actually a very huge push, and automation and AI is no longer like in a way only a technology need. It has now become a commodity. Everybody wants to explore this particular area and make their processes and operations more efficient. And as Mr. Partha just mentioned, like integration of AI technology with different cross space and creating like more value chain and sustainable solutions. So these are very important at this point for every organization to innovate different areas which they never thought of automating or bringing AI technologies and take it to the next level. So I can see there is a huge benefit in these areas. And again, as I mentioned, back office automation is driven by India. India is leading in this particular area. So mostly the innovation and implementation will be done through India. So there is a lot to explore and a lot to achieve. And I think we are doing going in the right direction at this point. And with this global push, I can see this industry will be touching around 3 billion by 2021, 2022.
Sorry, I just realized I was on mute. Fantastic, sir. Thank you. My last question before I take a few audience questions, Mr. Sheth. So, how do you see GCCs reinventing themselves over the next few years? I think we've already discussed the direction some things are going in, but how do you see the reinvention happening? What are maybe the few key pillars that you would identify?
I think the two big pillars are GCCs, which were only cost play, so optimize cost, improve cost structures, and so on. And my experience of the organization, we see that GCCs in India, and particularly, will start playing a big role on revenue. Help companies generate new revenue streams using technology, using talent. Uh, and today, some of our technology customers are already doing it. They are generating new revenue streams which were earlier not there. That's clearly a shift which is happening in that direction. The second is a big trend is what I would call it as the asset building. Uh, and I think Partha made that comment earlier, and I'll expand on what he said is that delivering outcome doesn't mean that always doing that work, but if you codify that, build it into a product mode, build what we use the word reusable components or reusable bots. I see that GCCs using technologies which we build or our kind of technologies will move in that direction. So uh, going in direction of revenue, going and building assets which you can use to accelerate, speed up your either an experience with your employees, or experience with your customers, or experience with your suppliers. That's the second part, and I think third, probably, which is very unique in GCC, and I'm just putting my little bit of a neck out here, which is going to happen probably because of what is the pandemic has taught us. Some of our customers found that their employees can actually operate from home, not for next 6-12 months, but they probably have said that they'll continue to operate permanently certain roles. And what it opens up very uniquely for India is that the talent pool, which was always Bangalore, NCR, Pune, Mumbai, Chennai kind of a bed, There is a possibility in next gen GCC, and I personally think it's highly possible. Is that where the GCCs will operate out of Bangalore, but the talent could be sitting in Shimoga or could be sitting in Patna or could be sitting anywhere, and they will a certain portion of the workforce will operate from any part of India and still service that global organization. So that talent access, which was always linked to a city and hence a very high expensive real estate, I think that is going to undergo a complete change. So that's coming. So one is structural, what they will do differently, but this is more operational aspect, which I foresee, happening, Rodra, in next couple of years.
That's a very interesting point. In fact, I mean, that was my last question, but I will take some audience questions right now. And my first question is actually connected to the point you just made. So the question here is essentially that in the current environment, a lot of companies, of course, have been forced to ask many employees to work from home. How have RPA, how has these technologies sort of helped these companies? Are there case studies of certain companies that have been used RPA to sort of make a WFH situation happen, because it's sort of been forced for most companies, right?
So I'll share, and I'm sure that my colleagues can share more with their personal, their organizational experiences. But two things we have noticed. One is in WFH, one of the biggest challenges is the productivity of the folks, who are working from home, and essentially what we have seen is that the productivity while you are at home, your network availability, all of that plays a very big role in making that seamless work experience. And there, bots have played a big role in a lot of our customers. You getting an access to new application, your security being validated instantaneously, any devices which you use which were not earlier part of the infrastructure being validated. So I think bots have been used in a big way. And the second area where it has been used in a big way is remote triggering. Because today, like technology like ours, you can build bots and you can remotely trigger it. You don't have to be in a premise in a data center to do it.
Right.
I think those and there are quite a few case studies on that, but I'll let my other colleagues share their experience.
Yes, please. Mr. Srivastav, Partha.
So
Yeah, sorry.
I would like to add a little bit what Milan was saying. Okay, so the way it has impacted in GCC, okay, the whole pandemic right now, it's a big shift towards how we operate in general itself. And this is where I was talking about that it is going to change the business model completely. For example, specific to work from home. So imagine if we are able to extend work from home to everyone or to large portion of the employee force as a policy of the company, which means it reduces our big cost on real estate. What we are doing across right now in Pune as well as in US right now, and we are experimenting this model, is where we have reduced our physical inventory and space heavily, and we have removed completely dedicated space, tables, and workstation for people. And we have created applications, including RPA as one of the element there, where you have to book a place when you want to come to the office, right? So that's a shift in how we are operating overall altogether. And right now, because the employees are also remote and we don't want to call them, we have completely automated their onboarding experience. They don't have to come in the office today to be onboarded. So from the HR activity, making them come on board, to providing them the machines, configuring their machines remotely. In fact, in this situation, either we ship their laptops to them, or we are configuring their machine remotely, everything from here, and then finally delivering the whole induction of 10 days remotely. So the whole model, the way we are operating, has completely changed because of this, and automation has played a huge part in supporting the backend or the backbone of what we are doing and automating the whole process here.
So what I hear, Sudeep and Milan as well, is that essentially the pandemic, and this is some sort of a silver lining, has sort of broken the inertia. I mean, a lot of companies were looking at technology adoption anyway, and this has sort of forced them to sort of do it right now and discover a lot of innovation in the process. Things they could have done faster, they could have saved money, they could have made a lot of the life simpler and processes efficient, right? And they have been able to do that as a result of being pushed to do that. So this is definitely very interesting. Sorry, anybody wanted to add? Partha, you wanted to add on that? Okay, sorry. Um, so one last question before I sum up our discussion today. This is essentially okay. So can automation help new sectors adapt to the GCC model? Also, yeah, I mean this is interesting. I mean, especially for India. I mean, there's definitely a potential for newer sectors. To look at how to look at utilizing the benefits of GCC, which many other sectors have done for so long. I mean, healthcare is one example, right? I mean, you mentioned that. So, what is your view on that? Maybe Shantanu, you would want to start with that.
Right. So as I mentioned, there is no limitation on that one. We can integrate a number of different sectors with this technology. I have mentioned about agriculture. Mr. Srivastav has given some example. So yeah, we can actually explore new use cases, new sectors, new zoner where actually this technology can be implemented, and wherever it is rule based or it is having a pattern, then this particular technology can be applicable. So there is no limit on that one. We can explore and we can implement. It just required right intention.
I have a point, if I can, is that
Yeah.
from an India point of view, we have seen that when pretty much every part of the world was able to operate at 20 to 25% capacity. So India competes as a nation with Philippines, with Eastern European countries, with Latin American countries. And one of the biggest things we've learned from our customers is that India operated at 90% to 95% within a couple of weeks. And it is just the sheer innovation, frugal innovation of the Indian leadership and talent, which they could really do that. A lot of other countries operated at peak at 20, 25, 30%. So I think there is one definite trend which we see, that any global corporation which had earlier not thought of having an India footprint and India presence, post this pandemic, one thing is absolutely certain, that they'll be setting up their centers in India. And very briefly on the sectors point, which was you asked earlier, is we are seeing some very unique sectors which are coming into India. So I think some of the government functions are looking at setting up centers in India for creating technology. So these are governments and government-related capabilities we are building. And the second sector, which I was quite surprised when I heard about it from being set up, is this entire marketing related aspects for a global company housed out of India. Today, some of the biggest product companies, including ours, we service and we reach to the entire world through tailoring and building brands and building messages here. I think that's a very unique new area or function which has suddenly come into the limelight. Again, the same point, tremendous talent available from a branding, from a digital skills point of view, and then this model which has worked really well. So there's some really probably if we all connect back 12 months from now, I think we would have seen that there are some unique industries and unique areas would have come into the GCC model.
That's a good note to end the conversation. A very positive note. And we are all looking forward to that as we emerge out of this situation. We are hoping that our innovation, our frugal innovation is the word you mentioned. We call it jugaad, right? Quote unquote. And we have always been good at doing that. And hopefully, this will lead to more investments coming in and realize that of course, as a country, as people, we can get things done even when pressed under very tough circumstances. Uh, Fantastic. Thank you. So I will just quickly sum up our discussion today. This is really the end of our discussion. So one of the first things we spoke about was the impact of RPA. This was mentioned by Mr. Srivastav, business model change, structural cost change, and the third point was reliability and safety. A very important and very interesting point that Shantanu made after that was on how GCCs have moved from purely cost arbitrage to becoming centers of excellence today. I think this is a very important point. This is about climbing up the value chain, and yeah, and about bot with bot scaling has become a lot easier. This is something Partha mentioned that RPA has led to the simplification of processes, an eye for insights. He also mentioned how not so much into the distant future we might have one of our colleagues who's actually a bot, Polly. That was the name you mentioned, right, Polly? Uh, and and yeah, I mean, the other very interesting point is about India's AI readiness. I think we are at number 17 in a very sort of hallowed group. We need to, my personal view, I think maybe we should be hoping for a lot more. But the key challenge there is something that has been highlighted, that only a 1.5% of our workforce has really completed the course. I couldn't get the name, sir, of that course that you mentioned.
Only 1.75% of the PhDs in artificial intelligence are done.
PhD. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Doctors. Got it. That's a very small number in terms of a global percentage, especially if you're at number 17. So
Right.
that's, yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a challenge. The other interesting point that was made, I think, through our conversation today is the use case in government, and the fact that a lot of, not only in India, but I understand globally, governments are looking to automate processes. I think one of the other things this pandemic has definitely led to is an extreme pressure on the fiscal side for governments, right? I mean, revenues have dried up, tax being the primary source of revenue. They need to become more and more efficient. They are pushed to do that, and definitely RPA and GCCs is a way to do that. Um, yeah, and the last point here I would actually close with is something again Mr. Srivastav made, is about value generation as sort of the key point. I mean, as long as there's a need and you can show the value, there will definitely be acceptance. There have been examples of that. Again, I'm very keen to see the rig of the future. I mean, what does that exactly mean? How can you automate a rig which is many miles away? Oil and gas is definitely a very human capital intensive sector as of today. But definitely, I mean, there is definitely a lot of potential, I think, where you could automate processes. Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks a lot to our panel today for joining us. We had a great discussion. I hope our audience enjoyed this as well. A lot of valuable insights. Big shout to Automation Anywhere as well for partnering with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.